All right, good morning, my Schmieda family, and welcome to True Crime Loser. Welcome back. How you doing? Real quick, if you would like to support this channel, I have a Patreon link in the description. I would really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody that participates and supports this channel through Patreon. I really appreciate it. And also, huge shout out to Laura Dykes and her boyfriend for coming to my comedy show in Frederick, Maryland on Sunday night. So fun. Went there drove up from New York City with two other comics, and we drive down there, and then we get to the gig, and we say hi to the guy that produces it, and we go and sit in this table in the back and kind of just wait for everything to get going. And all of a sudden, I just hear a voice go, "Are you True Crime Loser?" And I looked up, and the other comedians are just like, "No way that someone came to Frederick, Maryland from the True Crime Loser show." And it was great. I met Laura and her boyfriend. We laughed, we talked about old Chrissy Poo, and it was great. So thank you guys so much. Great people, fun show. Yeah, good times. Okay, so today, for this case, we're starting a new case. We're heading all the way down to Florida. Sunny Florida. Florida is a wild place. A lot of wild cases come out of Florida. Even just the wilderness down there is like almost always just about ready to retake over the road, or they're constantly like cutting back, and there's swamps everywhere, and there's alligators everywhere, and there's these great cities with flavor, and it feels like Miami, it's like flavor, but just as many cities with flavor, there's cities that just like strip mall hell. You can drive, for people that have never been to Florida, you can drive for days just in Florida, and it's just a big, wild, interesting, weird state down there. And I've always liked Florida, so we're headed way down to the strip mall hell of Florida. Just a city that you would never, think twice about staying in. And this is just the classic boy meets girl story. And the boy in this story is named Mike Dippolito. And Mike Dippolito, after watching a bunch of interviews and trying to, watch everything I can to do this episode, I think Mike Dippolito is a good guy. I think he's an honest guy. I think that his judgment, though, is probably as bad as a human beings can get. So back in 2009, we got Mike Dippolito, and he's currently in 2009 on parole. He's actually going to be on parole until 2032. And he's on parole for a fraud charge where he like duped investors and out of a bunch of money, and he went to jail, and he's on parole. And I don't know for sure, but I think the reason he was on parole, or I think the reason he did the scam that he got caught, the whole fraud where he duped investors, is I think he was a crack addict. So, so we got Mike Dippolito, gets in trouble with drugs at some point, and tries to fraud some people, right? And ends up getting caught, does a little jail time, gets out, and he's on this long parole thing, right? And he's married. So Mike Dippolito's married, he's on parole, he's living in Florida, right? Setting the scene a little bit. Well, like I said, he doesn't have very good judgment, and so Mike thinks, even though I'm married and on parole, I think I'm going to get a hooker. And so he calls an escort, and the escort that shows up is named Dalia. And Mike, with his judgment, falls in love with Dalia, even though he's married. And Dalia, to me, she reminds me in a way of a fellow Florida famous Floridian Casey Anthony, or even almost like a Jodi Arias, when Dalia lies, it creates a wormhole. It's almost like a black hole where just nothing can exist. She can just create one of those monotone wormholes where they're lying and everyone's just like, you almost just fall asleep and wake up and go, okay, I just don't want to hear it anymore. So I don't care if it's true. So he meets Dalia, the escort, and like someone with bad judgment, falls in love with the escort. And so then Mike ends up divorcing his wife. And then he divorces his wife, and then 5 days later, just nice and quick, he marries Dalia. So now Mike Dippolito marries Dalia, so now Dalia is Dalia Dippolito. And this is a very bad mistake on Mike's part to marry this woman. And I don't know, they seem like just a nice couple for a while, married couple. They don't really go out. They're more of homebodies. And, there's evidence that they wrote each other love notes. And from the outside, it looks like they're a great couple. Great married, happy married couple. Just your classic boy meets girl of an ex-crack addict that marries a hooker. Very sweet. But some weird things start happening to Mike. One of them is he had never really had any trouble with the cops other than his, when he went to jail and his fraud charge. But, he's trying to live a very clean probation type life. He really doesn't want to go back to jail. But nonetheless, a few months into being married to old Dalia, he starts getting pulled over by the cops a lot, like 6 times in 6 months. And finally, he's like, why are you guys pulling me over? And they tell him, someone keeps calling us with anonymous tips that you are a drug dealer and that you have drugs in your car. And so Mike is thinking, what? Like, I'm on probation. The last thing I'm going to do is sell drugs. I'm an ex-drug addict. And it's weird. And at some point, he signs over his townhouse to Dalia. He puts it in her name, which, again, Mike, we got to work on your judgment, okay? If you already divorced your wife and married the escort 5 days later, that's already a bad enough decision. But to sign over your house to the escort, that's just interstellar bad judgment. But, you never give your house to a prostitute. It's just, that's got to be like the number one rule in whatever book he's playing with. So he gives his house to Dalia, signs it over to her for God knows what reason. I'm sure she just wormholed him into, convinced him to do it. And then Dalia, at some point, hits up an old friend / like lover. I think kind of everyone she hangs out with is sort of like a friend, lover, ex, fling thing. So she, months into the thing, hits up her friend and says, I'm trying to get rid of Mike, her husband. And she was trying to frame him by the cops to try to get him to violate his parole, and then he'd get arrested and be gone. And just that wasn't successful. So now she's upping the stakes a little bit. So she asks her friend, do you know anybody that, basically, do you know a hitman? Do you know anyone that I could pay to kill Mike and get him out of the picture? I got the house. I want him gone. Can you help me? And the friend is like, oh, gee, I don't know. Let me think about it. And so then the friend, after that little meeting, calls the cops and goes, I know this, I've known this girl for a while, Dalia. She recently hit me up asking me if I know a hitman to kill her husband. And, I'm scared for this dude. She seemed dead serious about it. And the cops don't really believe him right away because, I don't know, I think they were just skeptical of the whole thing. So what they do is they say, all right, we're going to make you an informant and we're going to wire your car up with camera and sound, and you're going to meet with Dalia and tell her that you do know a hitman, and, we're going to try to get it on tape. So the friend says, okay, they wire up the car, cameras and sound microphones and everything, and he meets Dalia. And in this first tape, the friend is like, are you sure, do you want to do this? And she's into it, and she brought money, and she's saying, she's just very positive she wants this to happen. And so he says, okay, I'll put you in contact with this hitman, and the hitman needs $1,200 to buy a gun. And she has that big wad of cash. She hands it over. She's excited that it's moving forward and everything. And Dalia's this little petite, pretty good looking. Once you just know who she is, it's like, oh, what an ugly person. But just seeing her at first back then, she kind of has that guilty, I've been dragged through trials of hell look now. But back then, she's this petite, good looking. And so to see her in there with a wad of cash, like, all right, when are we going to get this done? And so the friend and her part ways. And now the cops are like, whoa, this is real. And so they get an undercover cop, wire up another car with cameras and microphones, and have Dalia meet with this big black dude, this cop who's, pretending to be a undercover, or who's pretending to be a hitman, who's a cop. And so Dalia meets with him, right? Gets in the car, and he's acting like a hitman, being like, all right, how do we want to do it? And again, because they want, with these fake hitman things where they want the spouse or whoever's trying to hire, they need the confession. And so he's asking a lot of questions like, are you sure you want this done? Because once I do it, it's done and there's no going back. So you need to be sure. And Dalia goes, I am 5,000% sure. And the media would end up taking that line, and that would be like the poster line for this whole case, is she is 5,000% sure. Nancy Grace called her the Black Widow because I think she just weaves web of lies. And Nancy Grace is, so she's like, the Black Widow is 5,000% sure. And so they decide that the hitman, that Dalia's going to go and work out early at the gym. Mike is still going to be there. It's going to be like 6 in the morning. He, at the time, is recovering from liposuction surgery. And so she's going to go to the gym. The plan is the hitman is going to get there. They're going to try to make it look like a robbery gone bad. He's going to kill Mike. And then, Dalia's going to be this sad widow that has the house, and she's going to, get to keep living her life. Well, as you know, it's not a real hitman. It's just a cop. And so the cops feel like, all right, let's set this thing up and make it look like it happened. And just coincidentally, which is totally crazy, the show Cops, the long-running show that's here in America that just follows cops around, is in Florida, in that same city. So they're like, okay, let's really go big with this. So sure enough, Dalia, the morning that they have planned, just like she said, gets up, goes to the gym. So they see her go to the gym. And then they quickly knock on the door. And Mike, who has had trouble with the cops, for drugs and fraud, he opens the door and sees all these cops and is like, what the hell is going on? And they're like, Mike, you're not in trouble. Old Dalia hired someone to kill you. Okay, so you have to come with us. And you see Mike just, he's recovering from liposuction surgery. And so he's sitting there like, okay, is this real? And there's huge camera crew because cops is in town. Bad boys, what you gonna do? So right when he opens the door, it's like full, like boom mic, like, Mike, you need to come with us if you want to live. And so Mike, all recovering from liposuction, no shirt on, he's like, shit, am I busted? Once you're a crack addict, I don't think you ever want to see cops at your door. It's just he had that look on his face of like, oh God. And so Mike goes with them, and they immediately put up caution tape and put all these, emergency vehicles, and the lights are on and the cameras are out there, and they make it look like a murder scene. And they do a pretty good job, too. And then they call Dalia at the gym. She's probably just doing, like, the elliptical, like, I'm about ready to get a house. My probation boyfriend, ex-crack addict, is dead. I'm just going to wormhole lie out of this thing, and then I'll be ready to date my old boyfriend or whoever it is. She's working out. And so they get the whole crime scene ready and call her. And so they call Dalia and they say, Dalia, this is the police. And she's like, is everything okay? And they say, you need to come home right now. And she's like, okay. And so she comes back, drives home. And when she gets there, she can't even really get close to her place because there's caution tape and there's all these, cops and ambulances and everything. And so she gets out, and runs up to the cops and was like, where's Mike? I want to see him. Where is he? I want to see my husband. Where is he? And this big cop, is looking down at her, and she goes, I'm sorry, ma'am, but your husband is dead. And, all the cops, the crew, the whole cops crew is there with their HD cameras. And she just goes into acting mode. And just goes, and like starts shaking and fake crying and falls into the cop's arms. And he's hugging her like, okay, it's okay. And they're looking at each other like, come on, lady. And so, just like that, people, we got an official lie cry. Ring the bell. Ding! We got a lie cry. Yes! We got basically a constant lie cry for a while. So and if you don't follow the channel, what a lie cry is, it's where you're crying, but also you're lying. The cry lie. So we got a cry lie. She's crying, like fake crying. What did I do? What's going on? And they're like, we're sorry. He's been killed. And the whole cops crew are out there, and it's just ridiculous. And so they're like, you need to come down to the station, and answer a few questions. We want to ask you, did he have any enemies? So they bring her down to the station she's thinking that they're going to ask her, like, who would do this? Are you okay? Ask her these questions, and she's really giving it her all, the lie cry. And so they get her down to the police station, and they put her in an interrogation room. And she's in there thinking she's about ready to just try to help them solve this brutal murder case. And a pretty great interrogation ensues. And so, she's sitting there thinking, like, I want to see my husband just lie crying like an idiot. I want to see him. And the cop's like, you don't want to see him. It's that bad. You don't want to see him. And she's like, I want to see him. And then they start the interrogation and they start reading her rights. And what's so interesting about this is, she thinks that she's about ready to talk to them. She thinks that they think that she's this woman that just lost her husband, right? So she's sitting there all confident. She's thinking, I got the power. They're going to ask me to help them. They're going to be really nice to me. Well, the cops, they know that this is just some woman that tried to get her husband killed. So they're not really being too nice to her. So you can sort of feel, even right at the beginning when they're saying like, all right, we got to read you your rights for this. I'm going to read these very slow. And if you don't understand one of them, then just tell me. And you could tell she's thinking like, why? She's like, I just want to see him. Why are you guys? And they're like, all right, so you have the right to remain silent. Anything, and they start reading her rights. And you can feel the little turn, the little flip. And one of the first things they do is they say, hey, hold on a second. And he opens the door of the interrogation room and they say, hey, bring that guy in here. Bring him in there. So they're really playing the game at this point and acting like that her husband was killed. And so they say, hey, bring that guy in here. And they bring in, like, two cops bring in the undercover cop that she met in the parking lot, the black guy that is the undercover hitman. So they bring him in, two cops bring in the cop, but the way they bring him in, it's like he's been arrested too. So they bring in this black guy and the cop goes, do you know him? Points at him, and Dalia's just sitting there and she knows him. This the guy that she met in the parking lot and planned this whole thing with. So she's probably thinking, fuck. And so she's like, no, I've never seen him before in their life. And he's like, do you know him? And she's like, no, I've never seen him before. And then they're like, all right, get this guy out of here. And they grab him as if he's like a prisoner and get him out of there. They slam the door, and then and then this interrogation starts. And this interrogation is bizarre because she thinks that she's there to help them, talk about, did he have any enemies? And it quickly turns, as you can imagine, it quickly turns. So that's where I'm going to cut off this show. And then the next one will start at the beginning of the interrogation. I'm going to post, and the interrogation, I think, as far as I know, the whole thing is just 30 minutes. And it's not even really an interrogation. They kind of played the game with her for a while, like, does he have any enemy? Blah. And then at a certain point, they're like, all right, it's over. Here's what happened. And the interrogator just lays down the law, just kind of tells her how it is in a way that is just real satisfying, just hearing her be like, you know what? This is how it is. This is what happened. But it's a very interesting interrogation. I'm going to put a link to the full interrogation, the video that I'm using, in the description, as long as I don't forget, to help people. So this was the backstory, and then check out the interrogation tonight or today if you have a chance. And then tomorrow we'll start analyzing the interrogation. Like always, thank you everybody that has supported the channel through Patreon. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Also, to everybody that's subscribed and likes and comments, it really does help me. And so everybody that's participating, you really do make the channel tick. And that's all I got today. Hope you have a great day. True Crime Loser, out. Why, Stiven?